Welcome, everyone, to RB1 Colon Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Fake News Podcast channel. I am the consummate professional, first ranking officer of the Terry McLaurin Stand Club and Diamond Mounter of the Jerry Judy Jewelry Company, as well as being BFFs with the Oracle, your humble host, Pete Rogers. And I am joined by some of the guys. We have the Duck Father, believer in the Deshaun Watson gospel, founder and lone proprietor for the Gus the Bus Four Seasons busing service and caster of the Double Reverse Chutzpah, resident old man Clark Barnes, and doubter of John Gruden's Jacob's handle shtick, the Brashad Perryman Ferryman, lifeguard and training at your neighborhood chase pool, and thinks your favorite team is run by donkeys, the ginger-bearded man, Nick Bodiford. Guys, how we doing today?
Doing great, Pete.
Scattered, Pete. It's been a busy day. How are you?
Oh, well, enough about me, Nick. Let's dive right into your day. What was so busy and scattered?
The NFL's just kind of thrown us for a loop here. Not consistently applying the COVID rules to all teams. So I ultimately, luckily, that meant that I had to do less writing today to get the preview out and ready for tomorrow. But that means I had to do a whole bunch of other things that I wasn't planning on doing. And so back to the house now, ready to rock.
Good. Well, make sure faketeams.com, as I say many times, we are also a written medium, not just podcast. Maybe you listen to this show purely because you're like, God, I really like what the content that these people bring, but I really just, God, the sound of Pete's voice is so grating. I wish there was another way to get this information where I didn't have to listen to this show. faketeams.com. You can read it. Read all of the information that we put out on there, including Nick quickly hitting delete about the Ravens and Steelers, since that is no longer happening.
Yeah, I do want to interrupt, though, and say that, Pete, I have had multiple compliments on your behalf. People have told me you have a radio-esque voice.
Stop it. I did just say that just to see whether or not one of you guys would give me a compliment. And Nick, so far, is my favorite co-host. Clark, sliding down the rankings there, buddy. Gotta pick it up. He's nodding with approval. Clark knows what he's focused. He knows that this show is where he's going to climb the ranks again. He's ready. All right, well, let's get into it then. We only have now, like Nick alluded to, 2 Thursday games for week 12 to talk about. We're going to do a starts and sits, of course. So let's start. Houston versus the Detroit Lions. Clark, this seems like a pretty good game for your Houston Texans coming off of a big win against the Patriots.
Yeah, a couple of injuries to watch out for with the Texans. Will Vollert seems to be healthy, and he's the one you're looking forward to starting. The Lions are terrible. They just got blanked by the Panthers. Matthew Stafford's fighting a thumb injury. Maybe Marvin Jones, and I think that's about it from the Lions. Anyone I can start from the Texans, I am definitely going to, as I expect them to just throttle the Lions here on Thanksgiving.
I was super high on DeAndre Swift to bounce back. The Texans' run defense hasn't been great this year, but now it sounds like his concussion / why he missed last week is maybe possibly bleeding into this week. I know Kenny Golladay is out, but it seems like DeAndre Swift is questionable for week 12, which is less than stellar for yours truly and for anyone who is a part of the DeAndre Swift team.
Well, I think it was encouraging. I'm checking now, but I think it was encouraging, that Swift returned to practice in an albeit limited fashion yesterday. I don't think that we have practice reports up for today, but, that's promising that he was able to kind of return to action a little bit. I think the one that everyone is wondering what the hell they should do about the player is Duke Johnson. This is the best possible matchup that a running back can have in fantasy football. The Lions are allowing 31.2 half-point PPR points to opposing backfields per game. The way that I looked at this, and I put this in the article, is that the Lions front seven basically got the performances of a couple of running backs who had been struggling back on track, namely Mike Davis last week. I know Christian McCaffrey come back for one game over the last 4 weeks, but during that 4-week span, Mike Davis did not have a double-digit half-point PPR game. The Lions brought him back into that. So I'm very scared, but I'm going to, I think, start Duke Johnson as like a high-end flex, low-end RB2, because I just think that this is sort of can't-miss territory.
And you're pretty confident. You're pretty happy looking at his usage in recent weeks. Like it hasn't been because of Duke Johnson not getting the use. It's that he hasn't been uber productive with it. I mean, he had 15 touches last week against the Patriots. Now he had 10 carries for only 15 yards, but he did see I guess he had 13 touches, 5 targets, 3 catches for 20 yards. And then against the Browns, 14 carries, 54 yards. And then Jaguars, 16 carries, 4 catches. So like the usage has been there for him. It's just he hasn't been producing as much, which is, he's a second string running back. That kind of stuff makes sense. But like you said, Nick, against a defense like the Lions, if he's still getting that amount of usage, this defense is so bad that he should have the opportunity to do a lot of production, which puts him as a solid flex, maybe even RB2 value this week. All right, well, then the other Thanksgiving game, our Thanksgiving, run of games was cut in the third because, as we said, the Baltimore and Ravens-Steelers game, which would have been a really nice way to end Thanksgiving as you're sitting with a full stomach of turkey and getting to bask in the Baltimore-Pittsburgh rivalry, which is one of the better rivalries in the NFL. That is now being bumped to midday Sunday. So all you have after Houston and the Lions is you have the Washington football team heading to Dallas to take on the Cowboys, and this is a big Amari Cooper CD Lamb test. We just saw them kind of get right against the Vikings, and we talked about it on Tuesday's show about like, have they returned to that must start? You got to play them if you got them. Big test. Washington has their defense is legit. That front four is getting after the quarterback, and we hope that those improvements along the offensive line and what we saw at Andy Dalton against the Vikings is still there. But this is a game, we'll see what's happening. But Nick, I know on the flip side of things, obviously this is the Dallas secondary that can be exploited, and Washington has some guys that you could take advantage of.
Yeah. So for a reference here, Dallas Cowboys, their quarterback pressure rate is 21.3%. That's middle of the NFL. Meanwhile, they've allowed 24 passing touchdowns. That's the most in the NFL. They have only recorded 3 interceptions, which is the second fewest, and only have 25 passes defended, which is the fewest. So for all those reasons, Alex Smith shapes up as a high-end streaming option. I have him as the quarterback 14 this week. Terry McLaurin is I think a locked-in top 5 wide receiver.
I have him. I think it's my wide receiver 4 this week.
Okay, cool. So he had an ankle tweak that made him a limited participant, I think, today or yesterday. But as long as guys are practicing, they often play. So if he's active, he's going to be in contention, I think, to be the highest scoring receiver of the week. The other guy in the passing game that I like is Logan Thomas. The last time that he played them, he went 4-4 for 60 yards and a touchdown. That was his that's the last time that he had a double-digit half-point PPR performance, and I think that was in week 6. But anyway, going further with Logan Thomas, he had 4 games in a row prior to Smith taking over where he recorded 4 targets in each one. Since then, it's been, I think, 6, 5, and 5. That's a little bit better. And, target 1 or 2 targets counts for a lot for a tight end. So I'm liking both of these guys. And if you were, playing DFS, you could stack those 3.
Well, then let's move on to the Sunday games. We have the Las Vegas Raiders heading to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. And what in this game, Clark, intrigues you?
So we're closing in on kind of the end of the fantasy season here. So start-sit questions should be pretty easy for you. The only one here I think to look out for is Julio Jones playing? And if he's not, do I want to get cute and go with Russell Gage or Zacharias something that Nick can probably pronounce and I can't? Otherwise, we know who's here. Todd Gurley is not putting up great numbers, but he's scoring touchdowns for you. I mean, this one should be a break ties in favor of type of game. Definitely want to get a piece of it.
Especially this Raiders offense, man. And if you're looking for, I don't know exactly what his rostered percentage is now, but off the top of my head, but Derek Carr, if he's available in your league, a great week to stream Derek Carr, who has been chucking the ball all over the field and goes up against a Falcons defense, allowing the most fantasy points to quarterbacks. So this Raiders passing attack, I know that in the past couple of years, it's been very much like, oh, Derek Carr checking the ball down. He's been, they've been getting some juice on these balls and getting players like
Easy, Pete.
Whoa. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. It's close to the holidays. Getting like Nelson Agholor. I think this could be another big Nelson Agholor game who's coming off of a nice, he had a 40-ish yard touchdown against the Chiefs last week. So Derek Carr, I definitely think is a solid play and stream for this week if he's available in your league.
Yeah, you nailed it with the Agholor call. I think that he's kind of the most pivotal guy here. And I think that his fantasy outlook will reside on Julio Jones's availability. What we've seen with Agholor is that in games where the opposing team is able to push the pace with a high-octane passing offense, like Buffalo, Kansas City, Tampa Bay, the Chargers, those are all opponents where Agholor has had his strongest games, and it's because he's facing high-octane passing attacks. We've seen with Atlanta that when Julio Jones is out, Matt Ryan can't, I guess, run an offense. So if Julio is active and is able to demolish the Raiders secondary, that's when the Raiders are going to be calling upon Nelson Agholor to be their deep threat over Henry Ruggs, who is just having a rough rookie season.
Yeah, it's not great. I was highly touting him at the beginning of this year, and I still think he'll be a very good wide receiver, but he just seems like it's taken a lot of effort for him to click, which is, we've seen that in the past. We've seen it take some time. We've just been spoiled in recent seasons where you've had guys like last year, DK Metcalf and AJ Brown and Terry McLaurin just come out and hit the ground running. And then this year you got guys like Chase Claypool and Jerry Jeudy to a certain extent, CeeDee Lamb, obviously. That would have been embarrassing. Oh, Justin Jefferson. My God. Peter. I got to re-rank these rookie wide receivers in my head.
So something I forgot to mention in the Washington football team section was Pete.
Sorry, Nick, we've already moved on, so we can't go back to a game. No, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say that I went back and reread your Terry McLaurin over AJ Brown piece today, and it was very well written. Now, Brown is making a case to turn you on your head. McLaurin, I think he's got the overall points, but AJ Brown is like a half a point ahead in points per game right now. Yeah. But anyway, a fun trip down memory lane.
It's Nick ascending the ladder, Clark.
Clark, you suck.
Let's move on. Los Angeles Chargers heading to Buffalo to take on the Bills. And are we finally about to see Austin Eckler in this backfield, Nick, for the first time since like week 2?
It certainly seems like it's a possibility.
Fingers crossed.
Group of guys that I've really enjoyed following, the up and coming fantasy doctors. They put out like 2-minute videos all the time on YouTube. It's a team of doctors, and I love this. It's like middle-aged doctors
this makes sense for Nick, the Twitter doc. He's got to be keyed in on his resources.
But I just love this like burgeoning enterprise of like middle-aged guys who are just doctors and are like, whoa, wait, people will listen to what I have to say on the internet if I like put out my film analysis. So they've been great. They issue updates really quickly. They have analyzed Eckler's 405-pound squat video from this week. They were looking at his sprints. And they're saying, look, he's doing by video, he's doing everything that you would want him to be able to do to return to action. He still has to return. They've activated him from injured reserve, which means they now have 3 weeks to put him on the active roster. But I mean, as far as the medical nerds go, he looks like he's okay. And I think an aspect that is going to be important here is Kalen Ballage, I believe, was added to the injury reports. I'll pull it up right now. With a shoulder injury this week. And I mean, they've basically kicked Josh Kelly to the curb, and Justin Jackson is, I think, not playing again. Kalen Ballage, ankle and calf. Yeah, thank you. So, they're kind of a one-back offense right now. If Ballage is actually banged up and Eckler's like 95% of the way, I think there's a chance that we'll just get a full helping of Eckler. And look around in your leagues, people. I was able to find him in one of mine where people just dropped him weeks ago and forgot about it. Yeah. So anyway, I think he might be back. And the Bills have kind of just been a welcoming front seven to opposing backfields. They're nothing special, but 21.3 half-point PPR points per game. 4 receptions per game. So that's going to help with Eckler's toolbox. Anyway, yeah, I think he could be back this week, and that would be terrific.
Yeah, both of these teams scoring in bunches and giving up a whole bunch as well. Whoever plays running back, you're going to want to get them in there. If you're choosing between the two, then it's an odd roster construction. But Bills coming off the bye shouldn't be forgotten, and they'll be lighting it up and still not stopping anyone. Both of these teams doing a great job at that. So probably even Mike Williams maybe in this one for the Chargers.
Yeah, I like that a lot, especially because Tre'Davious White doesn't move into the slot. And so I think that you're going to see them move. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, I think, are going to move all over this lineup, and you're going to get both of those guys heavily involved. I also want to quickly remind those out there that not to forget that this is Zach Moss's backfield now. Forget about Devin Singletary. Ignore Devin Singletary. He's useless to you. The Chargers have allowed top 15 back in the last 8 weeks, so Zach Moss is primed for another. Frank Gore put up numbers on this defense last week. If Frank Gore can put up numbers on this defense, Zach Moss can too.
That's true. Kind of a fun narrative here. Was Josh Allen Justin Herbert's loose comparison in the draft process?
I think so. Yeah, this is the battle of the inaccurate strong arm quarterbacks.
Mobile.
Love it. Mobile. Surprisingly mobile with strong arms, and they can't hit the side of a barn. I am in for it. Let me be honest though. Justin Herbert.
They're so good.
They're
both so good.
Looking a lot better than Josh Allen did when he first entered the league. So throwing that out there. All right, let's move on. Tennessee Titans heading to Indianapolis to take on the Colts. And Clark Barnes, we talked about A.J. Brown a little bit earlier. Am I bold in saying that I'm a little tepid about good old A.J. Brown in terms of a fantasy stud? He hasn't quite posted in recent weeks the wide receiver one numbers that you would reliably want. And against a Colts defense that's allowed only 29 points to the wide receiver position the last 4 weeks, third best. A.J. Brown, wide receiver 2 maybe this week?
Yeah, this is always hard to do because it's A.J. Brown, and instead of who? Do you have such an incredibly stacked roster that you're maybe thinking about not playing A.J. Brown? Just from watching the games, A.J. Brown's a couple of plays away from us not even having this conversation. So he's still very much involved in the offense. And while the Colts defense is good, A.J. Brown is really an ascending kind of otherworldly talent that we should see for 5 or 6 years here. So yeah, absolutely go with him. I think the question is, are you going to trust that you can decode the riddle in the Colts backfield? Are you going to go with Raheem Hines? Are you going to go with Jonathan Taylor? I think the Colts finally want it to be Jonathan Taylor, but Phillip Rivers' history and what we've seen so far this year is, making me lean pretty hard toward finding a way to get Raheem Hines in my lineup, especially in PPR. It's no doubter, but maybe even in standard, finding a way to get him in there.
For the record, let it be noted, the last time they played the Titans, that was the one where Raheem Hines had 70 yards on the ground, 45 yards through the air, and 2 touchdowns. So we saw a good good bulk work from Raheem Hines the last time they played the Titans. It would be very much like the an NFL team to completely change their game plan when you play the same team in a 3-week span, but who knows? It could be another Raheem Hines games. Quickly for the record, Clark, I have guys who maybe are not perceived wide receiver 1s or 2s that I have ranked above A.J. Brown this week. Brandon Cooks. And we'll touch on it, but Jakobi Meyers. Back on the Jakobi train.
Brandon Cooks, okay. Jakobi Meyers. Oh, boy. Okay.
It's spicy.
Yeah, I'm anyway. Okay, so what I'm excited about for this game is the Colts side of things. 2 weeks ago, we got to see Michael Pittman Jr. be schemed all over the goddamn place.
Give me that Michael Pittman Jr.
Against the Tennessee Titans. Now, last week, he only had 3 targets. That was against the Packers. He's battling Jair Alexander a little bit. Yair, not sure. One really cool aspect of this, though, is that Pittman is getting 1, carries, but 2, a lot of time in the slot. So we like to see teams scheme the ball into players' hands, and with the Tennessee Titans allowing the 8th most points per game, fantasy points per game, half point PPR, half point, you got it, 33 and a half of them to opposing receivers. I think this is another blow up spot for Michael Pittman Jr. We should acknowledge, the Phillip Rivers caveat of having a shot arm, but it's indoors. That's good. He's much better indoors. Fire up Michael Pittman Jr.
Yes, Michael Pittman Jr. should be not only like you should be rostering him in every league that you possibly can. I just spent $20 fab to get him in one of my leagues because I am that committed with only like 40 fab, only $40 left in my fab budget. I was like going 50% because Michael Pittman Jr., the Colts rest of the season's schedule is just too nice to not buy a part of this offense. And the fact that Pittman has become seemingly the number one option, or at least from a scheme perspective, from getting the ball. Like he only saw 3 targets last week against the Packers, but he caught all 3. And one of them he ran for like a 40-yard touchdown. So like the guy makes plays, and I want him in all of my leagues, especially against the Titans.
Touching on the schedule point you just made. So like you said, we got Tennessee this week. That's a terrific matchup. Then it's Houston, Las Vegas, and Houston again. That takes you through the semifinals. That's fantastic schedule. Incredible. Now, week 16, sort of difficult, sort of not. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've been had by receivers this season, but the point is, look, we're trying to just get to the championship game, and Michael Pittman Jr. is a great way to help you get there.
True that. All right, let's move on. The New York Giants head to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. This is the first game that we will see the Bengals without Joe Burrow, and it doesn't seem like Ryan Lindley is going to be their starting quarterback. I don't have his name in front of me, but it looks like I thought they picked someone up off the practice squad and then announced him as the starter. Name I am blanking on, so we will call him Blank Face for now. Nick, talk to us about this offense, because you have a little vibe about this backfield possibly.
Yeah, well, so the no-name quarterback that you referenced is
Blank Face, please.
Blank
Use
Face.
his God-given name.
Brandon Allen, a.k.a. Blank Face. He played for Denver for 3 games last year and he actually kind of looks like a chuck it all over the park kind of guy.
Ooh,
anyway,
saucy.
The player that we're here to talk about is Samaje Perine, who was taking up Giovanni Bernard's pass catching role over the last week or two as Gio became the lead back for the team, which is very bizarre because Samaje Perine is not a short statured player. Anyway, they wanted to bang Bernard between the tackles, while Perine, who is 240 pounds, operated as like the ballerina back. Doesn't make any sense. But
this is the same logic that Washington uses when they're like, nah, Antonio Gibson, the converted wide receiver, shouldn't be catching passes.
That's a great point.
Thank you.
Now, this offense is going to struggle to get down to the red zone, but we're all just trying to find guys that can play. The New York Giants are allowing the 7th most half-point PPR points to opposing backfields. Specifically, they're getting pummeled in the receiving game with 6.2 receptions per game and 52.4 receiving yards allowed. So for a guy who was just acting last week as the team's pass catching back, now stepping into the full-time role, if you need a flex, you got one.
Yeah, I like all of that. I want to get away from this game in every way possible, except maybe starting the New York Giants defense.
I like that call.
I think things are going to be terrible for the Bengals moving forward here. Of course, the only piece of a team that is absolutely terrible is a back getting volume. So I still like your point, Nick, but there's a lot of, good wide receiver talent on this team that's been playing well with Joe Burrow throwing the ball for his life, and that has come to an end.
Yeah, unfortunately, my T. Higgins shares are, I'm rather upset right now. I'm a little nervous. I also think that Wayne Gallman, I feel like he's probably been, maybe you don't consider him a top fantasy option, but since week 7, Wayne Gallman has been the RB7 in fantasy football in standard leagues. So fire him up. He's been good, which is a shocker.
Volume matters a lot.
Volume, as they say, volume is king, and the Kings have volume because they eat a lot of food. Let's move on. The Cleveland Browns heading to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. And the Jaguars, if anything tells you that there is a team who is tanking more than the Jaguars, it is the Jaguars benching Jake Luton for Mike Glennon this week, because why not? Let's just see what Glennon can do, which has me slightly nervous about Jacksonville's pass catchers.
It's an upgrade. You're still just asking yourself the same question of, am I going to bet on Keelan Cole having a huge game or DJ Chark catching that deep shot? James Robinson is obviously a go, but Jacksonville's being very Jacksonville this season. When Minshew comes back, I'll have some more interest, but it's not
Until
good.
then, it's like, yeah, I don't want
When you're upgrading to Mike Glennon, things are not great.
No, when that's your like ace in the hole.
And that is an upgrade, by the way.
Yeah.
They wanted to see what they had, and they found Mike Glennon sounds good.
That is their scouting report on Jake Luton. Mike Glennon sounds good.
Both of these guys, I was shocked that this team has compiled these two as their backup to Gardner Minshew, who's like not that big of a quarterback. They employed two stork-sized quarterbacks to back him up of nearly identical stature, both 6'7" and within 4 pounds of each other, between 225 and 229 pounds. Luton runs a 1.75 10-yard split, and Glennon runs a 1.74 10-yard split. Their cone drills are also
love it.
Within like 0.1 seconds.
I love how you draft the clone of the guy you already have. Makes perfect sense.
And both of them did not manage to jump 30 inches in the vertical. One was 26 and a half, one was 28 and a half. Anyway, it baffles me why. I understand roster mirroring for different positions, but trying to get like the most unathletic two quarterbacks to back up.
But there's roster mirroring. There's roster mirroring with like your starters and the guys behind them, so you don't have to completely shift your offense. It's another thing to like mirror your backup with the third string quarterback, or it's like if we have to commit to our backup quarterback, at least we have this third string guy, which means we can keep this offense going.
Yeah, they have these two Jack Skellington guys walking around the complex. It makes no sense.
I'm not in love with this being a Baker Mayfield game, even though the Jaguars are giving up the third most points to quarterbacks. Don't trust Baker to do anything with that. But I do trust Nick. I know you have a super spicy take. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, both are going to be top 5 backs according to Nick this week. So that's what I say.
The Browns have been very comfortable just cruising with the run game in some bad weather games. And why would you not keep doing that against the Chargers?
Yeah,
the Jaguars.
I think 50 combined touches for Chubb and Kareem Hunt is totally – I mean, they've been in like the mid to low 40s, and Jacksonville is allowing the 5th most fantasy points to opposing backfields, 23.6.
I love it.
Yeah.
The Jags are going to feel blessed that the other team is just running the ball down their throats all day, so that it's only like 32-4 instead of 32 to not.
Also, good on the Browns, because in the last few games, I feel like has been I keep preparing myself for like the classic, good Browns, but then they just get smacked by a bad team. Thought for sure that was going to happen against the Eagles last week. I thought for sure that the Carson Wentz Eagles were going to somehow beat the Browns, despite the fact that the Browns were 6-3. Good on the Browns for like actually winning games they should be winning, and go to Jacksonville and win this game. In fact, win it by a bigger margin than the Steelers. Why not? Go crazy.
And talking real football for a second, remember, this is the Browns. Stefanski winning games that he should win is a huge step forward for that franchise.
Hey, I'm sorry I didn't call attention to this sooner. Clark, where are you?
In a cave.
I mean, if I turn the light on, I feel like it's too much. I'm at the windowsill of this dark and lonely place in the Pacific Northwest.
Are you not frightened?
Constantly.
I would be way too scared to just podcast in pitch darkness.
Clark figures that he's seeing himself, and so if anything comes up from behind him, he'll see it. We'll all see it. We can warn him if there's like some ghoul just like hiding in the background.
Been watching a lot of scary movies lately. This will help me detect what's going on. Yeah.
All right, going to cut in for a second for a quick ad break. All right, let's move on. Carolina Panthers head to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. DJ Moore is a wide receiver 1 this week. I have ranked him as wide receiver 12. He's been a top 5 receiver the last 2 weeks. Minnesota, their defense has been mildly better this week, or in the past weeks, but they're still giving up the 5th most points to wide receivers. And you know that this Panthers offense is going to come to play because it's a Teddy Bridgewater feel-good game. I won't call it a revenge game because I don't think Teddy Bridgewater really is seeking revenge from the Minnesota Vikings, because they were really good to him and everyone loves Teddy Bridgewater. And he's going to come to Minnesota and be like, look at me, as he takes back this offense and passes the ball to DJ Moore, who's emerged as that top passing option. And a wide receiver 1 this week.
Viking secondary allowing 35.5 PPR points per game. I know it sounded like a broken record reeling off that stat, but it's the 4th most in the league. This should be a fun barn burner.
This is am I thinking about putting Kyle Rudolph in there that game?
Clark,
I mean, don't.
Yes, but
don't.
do.
No,
but do.
That.
But listen to Clark. Clark and Kyle Rudolph text each other regularly.
Just the point being, there's going to be a lot of touchdowns for both teams probably here.
Yeah.
Someone even in Kyle Rudolph's stature may fall into the end zone.
Kyle Rudolph is not a spicy take. Let's do some quick research here. Panthers giving up. Well, they're giving up league average to tight ends. Well, whatever. I like to be saucy. All right, let's move on to the afternoon. Oh, wait, no, we got 2 more games in the 1 o'clock time. Well, 3 more, really, because we got stupid-ass Baltimore, Pittsburgh. Okay. Arizona Cardinals heading to New England to take on the Patriots. I have 2 spicy takes here. Obviously, one of them I've already talked about, but I'll get into both of them. But first, Nick or Clark, do you guys have anything that you would like to say about this game before I just burn this whole place down?
Take it away, Pete.
All right, let's burn some buildings. Jakobi Meyers, I have as my wide receiver 16. Yes, I understand that it was the Demir Bird show last week. I am still trusting the fact that Jakobi Meyers, like for the last 7 weeks, has been a reliable wide receiver 1 in PPR leagues. He has seen the bulk share of targets and catches. He is the best wide receiver on the Patriots, and against a Cardinals secondary that's given up the most points to wide receivers over the last 5 weeks, including the most touchdowns, something that Jakobi Meyers has yet to do this year. I feel pretty confident in Jakobi Meyers putting together a very solid wide receiver 2 production for you this week. And the thing that's going to absolutely burn this house down, that is going to make Clark probably decide that maybe this podcast isn't for him and that he should leave. Ranked 3 spots below Jakobi Meyers, I have DeAndre Hopkins, because I believe in Stephon Gilmore, and I believe in DeAndre Hopkins having already a couple games this year where he is just not disappeared, but maybe been an afterthought. Maybe has gotten you 3 catches for 50 yards, and that's not wide receiver 1 stat lines. And so I have DeAndre Hopkins as the wide receiver 19 this week, facing the Stephon Gilmore treatment. And Stephon Gilmore, when asked who is he going to cover this week, he literally just said the eyeball emojis. We all know who he's covering, and we all know it's going to be a battle. Clark is re-ranking now the podcast members in his own order, and I have fallen way down the ladder.
I just have a hard time at this point in the season because the spicy take is that DeAndre Hopkins is the wide receiver 19. So he's just an absolute start still.
Yeah.
I mean, he's had some bad games. Totally agree, but he's amazing. Playing against Stephon Gilmore is not good for your fantasy production. I love the Jakobi Meyers take. I think that he's proven that he's just good, and we're really starting to look ahead to next year in our dynasty leagues of, is this person going to be like a real thing for a long, long time? But yeah, I don't know. I'm not worried about Hopkins. Couple bad games. It happens.
My favorite Jakobi Meyers statistic is that over the last month, the fewest percentage of snaps that he's taken is 98. He's a full-time player. He is the engine of the Pats passing game. And the Cards defense overall is just so injury plagued. Their front 7 continues to lose guys. I mean, they most recently, I think it was Corey Peters with his Achilles. They're getting pummeled by mobile quarterbacks. So fire up Cam Newton. Actually, just as a fun, I hate to do the my fantasy team thing, but do you guys have who's a higher ceiling start, Cam Newton or Teddy Bridgewater?
I'd say Cam Newton, but that's the unbiased Patriots fan in me.
I would go with Cam too, but I think it's close and I could make a Teddy argument.
Yeah, cool. I definitely think you can. I also think Kyler Murray, I am not emotionally prepared for what Kyler Murray is going to do to this Patriots defense. It's going to take years off my life, but I'm going to enjoy watching it. It was like watching Deshaun Watson last week, where it's like, oh my God, Deshaun, I hate that you just did this, but you are very good at what you do. All right, let's move on. Miami Dolphins head to New Jersey to take on the Jets. Do we need to spend time on this game?
Who's playing running back for the Dolphins?
Good question. Is Myles Gaskin back? Internet doctor, so. Nick, let's go.
He's
what you're here for.
He's been activated from injured reserve, and he practiced, I think, today, but he was in a red non-contact jersey. He's going to have to get in the next 2 days of practice, actually practicing to play. Of course, Salvon Ahmed is also injured. He did not practice on Wednesday today, which, Wednesday is the day of rest if someone needs to rest.
I believe that's Sunday.
But a full-on DNP, we're non-denominational here. A full-on DNP is pretty jarring, and so shoulder injury, not great for a running back. Matt Breida, I think, is back to fighting shape, so this could kind of devolve into the Breida first show, which, just double checking. Okay, so he only played on 11% of snaps that last week. Patrick Laird was in on 26 and Ahmed was 66. This could be Breida is the rusher between the 20s and Laird is the pass catching guy. But Clark, I want you to hit on the Breida thing in a second here. I just want to alert everybody to the fact that Tua he came up with an injury today on his throwing hand thumb. So we don't even know who's going to play quarterback. It could be Ryan Fitzpatrick. If so, fire up your Parker shares.
If so, Devontae Parker is a wide receiver 1 this week. If Ryan Fitzpatrick is under center, Devontae Parker is going to finish a top 10 wide receiver.
Yep.
Sexy. All right, let's move on. Oh no, God, I keep forgetting that there's stupid Baltimore versus Pittsburgh and the 1:00 slate. All right, let's tackle it so we can get it out of the way. Ravens head to the Steelers to play them. Clark, what's your vibe?
Play the Steelers. I'm curious, again, what's going on with injuries and the Ravens backfield? Is it going to be just Gus Edwards, or is this why the game moved? Are we going to try to get Dobbins in there?
That would certainly dampen your Gus the busing service if they pushed it back to get J.K. Dobbins back in the fold, which would be great because we just saw him put together a very strong performance, and the Steelers, could be a good bounce, a good place for him to continue what we've seen.
I think we're going to have a James Conner game. I think that the Steelers are going to have to run it, so they're not going to be able to protect Ben long enough with a good enough secondary from the Ravens. So maybe a little bit of a damper on your Steelers guys, but still, how do you not start Claypool?
I think Chase Claypool is matchup proof. I'm, as a wide receiver 13, Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster, I both pushed down, but Chase Claypool, not only just because of his work in the passing game, but also his work, they give him the ball rushing sometimes too, and they get him involved in that method as well. And so I think I'm starting to how we felt about DK Metcalf at the beginning of the year, where it's just DK Metcalf is a wide receiver 1 regardless of his matchup until he met up with Jalen Ramsey. But even then, he still put up a touchdown on that. No, it's pretty good. Or no, he didn't, but that was against the Cardinals, put up a touchdown. Anyways, Chase Claypool, I think, is matchup proof. That's
not disagreeing with you, but this is the kind of game where Juju Smith-Schuster gets 11 catches for 167 yards and a touchdown, and then ejected for blindside blocking someone. So this is why
has this happened before?
Yeah. So okay, countering everything that you guys just said, and doing so in a swift manner. Deontay Johnson is still the top dog here. He had 16 targets last week. Chase Claypool had 10, and that's terrific. But this is still Deontay's house. He is a top 12 wide receiver, no questions asked. Claypool is up there, probably is a top 15 option. As for the James Conner stuff, the game getting pushed back impacts injuries in a really interesting way, because the Ravens defensive line had both Brandon Williams out last week with an injury and Calais Campbell out with an injury. Those are two guys over 300 pounds who are just massive, talented playmakers on the defensive line. Brandon Williams specifically is a run stopper, Calais Campbell all over, but really killing it in the passing game. If this extra rest time allows Calais Campbell and Brandon Williams, who both did have to go on the COVID reserve list, if this allows them to come back, that is bad news for James Conner. And his ranking would tumble for me if those guys are able to play. As far as the Ravens backfield, I think you guys kind of covered it there. If Dobbins is able to come back, then our waiver claims for Gus the Bus is all fucked up. And, there you go. If not, start him, because the Steelers have actually been a little bit vulnerable on the ground. Now, last thing, I'm just going to put on my Fox Mulder hat here for a second. I've had a buddy of mine who's kind of been talking about, is the NFL maybe intentionally misreporting some of the COVID case numbers. And his long theory is Lamar Jackson came down with it and they pushed it back. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. I'm not here to discuss that. What I am here to discuss is the fact that this is from a graphic from Defector data. Between Monday and Saturday, the NFL averages 32 and somewhere between 32 and 27 players going on the COVID reserve list. On Sundays, that number drops to 5. Are you telling me that
everyone gets healed by Saturday?
On game day, when two teams are meeting, the spread is lower?
It's magic. I
think that there's something that needs to be looked into a little bit more here. And John Harbaugh, you're a total asshole. Anyway, moving on.
The RB1 podcast is coming to take down the NFL as an enterprise. We're ready. We have the tools and the resources. SB Nation, give us a blank check so that we can take down the NFL. All right, let's get to the Sunday afternoon games. Finally, screw you, Baltimore, Pittsburgh. New Orleans heading to Denver. The Saints playing the Broncos. My question to you guys is, we saw Michael Thomas obviously get a lot of work in the PPR. No touchdown, though, because Taysom Hill, once he gets down to that goal line, it's the Cam Newton effect. And we also saw Alvin Kamara have his kind of ceiling capped because of Taysom Hill not throwing him the ball in the passing game. So if you have to pick between those two guys, Clark, who do you think is going to have the better fantasy performance against the Broncos, Alvin Kamara or Michael Thomas? This is very important. You have to answer honestly.
I will go with Alvin Kamara.
Good answer.
It's really tough. For me, Kamara plummeted to the RB number 3 spot after being the RB1 for weeks and weeks and weeks.
How dare you, Nicholas?
Yeah, I think he's still the guy.
He's sandwiched between Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt.
It is a little bit concerning that, he went down to just one target. There's of course the narrative that running quarterbacks don't throw to running backs that much, which I subscribe to up until earlier this week. Sam Hoppen put out some data on targets to running backs via quarterbacks who run for 75 attempts or more, and that's excluding scrambles. So it's actually like running quarterbacks, and it actually showed that they still kind of do target running backs at a league average amount. It seemed like it trailed off a little bit. Anyway, I got to look more into it. But
what are the stats for like a tight end targeting a running back?
Not anymore, because ESPN is a bunch of assholes.
ESPN kills fun. We're taking them down after we take down the NFL.
Taysom Hill is a serious fantasy option, though, as a quarterback.
Yeah, so we deal with incredibly small sample sizes analyzing the NFL, and I love analytics work because it can highlight where you should look for something and start to develop a story of why something is happening, and analytics can just make you focus on that. But I think sometimes we may go too far. So far, we have one game of Taysom Hill being a starting quarterback in the NFL and what that's going to look like. We may not see the exact same thing in his second game. I'm going to bet on Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara being outstanding. And just from what the guys that were calling the game said, Taysom Hill seems to understand very much that Michael Thomas is good. They were asking him about so when he practice squad favorite wide receiver? And he's like, no, I'm going to throw it to Michael Thomas all the time. And that's what he did. So one game, he's not much of a passer. He's going to suck up some of the touchdowns around the goal line, which I think sucks for Kamara and for Michael Thomas, who are both getting those looks. But I think what we saw from Taysom Hill is that he's a decent quarterback and that the Saints are still going to score pretty well with him under center.
Is there anyone on the Broncos that you are confidently starting this week with the utmost confidence? Because the answer is no.
Probably still Judy is like a high end flex. Am I out of my mind there?
He's really good.
He's really good, but do you trust Drew Lock to get him the football? I don't.
I don't trust the coaches not to make Melvin Gordon happen.
A thing.
They're just shoehorning that.
I have Jerry Judy's my wide receiver 40, by the way.
Okay. Locke has he's supported Tim Patrick and Jerry Judy mostly over the last 3 weeks. Judy had a down week last week, but Yeah, not terrible performances. And the Saints defense has really been kind of wishy-washy. I think they're an outrageously talented unit. They just haven't always stepped up to the plate.
It's
I
true.
don't think I'm shying away from Judy as a flex.
In the last 3 weeks, they've been top 10 in fewest points allowed to wide receivers. So things are clicking. And you're saying, you are right. Like, this is, a lot of people have said this, where it's like the Saints defense is super talented, and it was surprising how poor they started the season off. And it seems like things might be clicking now. Speaking of a just absurd defense, let's move to San Francisco 49ers heading to Los Angeles to take on the Raiders. And I asked the question, is there anyone in Denver who not the Raiders, the Rams. Thank you, Nick. Your look of confusion corrected me. I asked if there was anyone on the Broncos who you'd confidently start. Is there anyone on the 49ers you'd confidently start? Because here's what the Rams defense has done in fantasy the last 5 weeks. Fewest points to quarterbacks, third fewest points to running backs, fewest points to wide receivers, and 12th fewest points to tight ends. So maybe Jordan Reed is the only viable play, but I would I would bench anyone on my team who is on the 49ers this week.
This is just the worst when this happens, and I hate this for 49ers fans because I think you have such a good coach and a decent shot at it every year. But I've just completely forgotten about the San Francisco 49ers from a fantasy standpoint no, there's no one I would start. Like, maybe if I get a hot tip on the running back that's going to get 18 carries and he's available. But we don't even know who that's going to be. Like, I have, I think, 3 different 49ers running backs on IR throughout my 4 different leagues of like every shot I've taken at the 49ers backfield. So
they all play like one game and then leave.
So Raheem Mostert, Raheem the Dream, he has been designated to return from injured reserve. Now, again, doesn't mean he's playing. He has 3 weeks to get right, but this is a Sunday afternoon game. We will know if he gets practices in on Thursday and Friday or not. And if he does, I don't think anyone's going to dispute that he immediately becomes that guy you were just talking about, Clark, who gets 18 touches. And if so, like, are any of you guys afraid to get Mostert in there as like a top 15 option?
I'm over confident or over hyping this Rams defense. This Rams defense has just been playing otherworldly the last few games. And I would, as we are pushing to the fantasy playoffs where games matter more so than ever, I don't know if I would be wanting to, unless I just didn't have anyone else who I felt confident in. I agree with you, Nick, that like the starting running back for Kyle Shanahan there is fantasy value, just like baseline with that. But if I could get out from it, I would.
Clark, I want to hear you talk about the Kyle Shanahan run game because you wax poetical better than any of us here. But I will say, one, Raheem Mostert still has the fastest time of any running back in the NFL this year, 23.09 miles per hour. 2, quick name game this week, James Conner or Raheem Mostert?
I would go James Conner, and depending on how things go this week, I could easily see Mostert returning to like a top 8 option the rest of the way. I love Kyle Shanahan, but when you're on your 3rd, 4th, 5th quarterback in the NFL, doesn't really matter how good your coach is sometimes. So that's just why I'm so far out. But again, Mostert gets 18 touches a game. Okay, I'm back in.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. I think I would also break in favor of James Conner, but I 100% agree that if James Conner puts together another average / below average performance and Raheem Mostert shows any sign of life against this Rams defense, I'm buying it. All right, let's move on. 3 games left. We have the Kansas City Chiefs heading to Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers. And from a real football perspective, I mean, this Tom Brady guy got to stop throwing interceptions. Good Lord. Win an important game, Tom. I mean, they call you the GOAT, and it just like go win a game that you need to win. Am I right, Tom? Am I right? I don't think that there's anything on the Chiefs that you're like stopping from. The craziest stat I just saw was that in the last 4 weeks, Travis Kelce is averaging 21.6 half-point PPR points per game. The number 2 tight end in that time frame is Darren Waller with 9.9. It's just out of this world what Travis Kelce is doing. So he is a lock to just continue to be basically a top wide receiver, if not even like a fucking quarterback in terms of numbers for the rest of the time.
Edwards-Helaire finally getting into the end zone. I just want people to remember this when I'm freaking out about Travis Kelce as a top 6 pick next year, because I was not on an island, but certainly not the most popular man in the world, saying he was a at least second, if not end of the first pick this year. Just love it when there's one huge tight end and he's just absolutely rolling. No idea what to expect in this game other than I think it's going to be high scoring. I know, going out on a limb. That's saying something a little bit with now interception prone Tom Brady at the helm for the Buccaneers. I feel like the Buccaneers want to commit to someone in the running game and keep forgetting that halfway through the game and seemingly forcing the other back in there. Ronald Jones looking okay, then Leonard Fournette's dropping passes. I just don't get it. Antonio Brown looks like he's going to be the Edelman-esque wide receiver for Brady, probably late to the game on this one. That's going to free everything up for everyone else. I think the pie that just gets bigger. It's going to be a real treat to watch this one and break ties in favor of this game. Cameron Brate coming on for you tight end needy folks. He's fine. He should score this week again.
So the two things I want to add to this are this should be a big time passing fest, which would indicate that Leonard Fournette, the dynamic pass catching back, will outsnap
I know.
and outperform Ronald Jones, who also is never profiled like a pass catching back. But anyway, I mean, Fournette, they've named him the guy to do that job. He's ill suited to perform. So break your flex tie with Fournette over Ronald Jones. And then a neat little tidbit from PFF Gerard 4 hours ago. Bucs red zone targets in the last 3 games. Antonio Brown, 1. Chris Godwin, 1. Rob Gronkowski, 3. Mike Evans, 10. So if you're wondering which receiver has the highest ceiling, right now it is definitely Mike Evans.
Mike Evans still very good at football.
Good at Mike Evans, I have as my wide receiver 9, Chris Godwin, wide receiver 27, and Antonio Brown, wide receiver 37. That we've seen the hierarchy cement itself from a fantasy perspective. Mike Evans is seeing all that red zone work, and to also help lend her viewpoint on the Buccaneers backfield, the Oracle is here to tell you whether or not, we'll see if she agrees with Nick as to which running back is the one to play this week as they take advantage of a Chiefs defense that you can run on.
My pick for today is Ronald Jones. I sense that his dedication to football has been lifelong from early days. So I feel Rojo will go.
Well, you heard it here first.
You heard it here first. I think she did that just so that she could say Rojo will go. I think the rhyme was what kind of like really prompted that whole vision.
She should have said Gojo, but
missed
not
opportunity.
to critique the Oracle.
No, the Oracle is uncritiquable.
I really like her comment about how he's been committed lifelong to football. With there was the report from Nelson Sousa, the like high stakes millionaire from just fucking fantasy, which I think is all of our dreams, who had some inside guys in Los Angeles. And when he was drafted out of was it UCLA or no USC initially, he spent the summer before his rookie season at this same club, like every night, openly smoking pot and eating cheeseburgers. That was like his thing, was just
if that's not commitment to the game, Nick, I don't know what is. I don't know what is.
NFL weight.
Yeah, that's just trying to pack on the NFL muscle that you need in order to run through. And well, he wanted to make sure that he was not considered a small pass catcher. Didn't
as a firm believer in socialism, he was redistributing the wealth to those hard-working college girls who are just trying to make themselves a better life.
On to the next.
What is this? Sunday night, Chicago Bears heading to the Green Bay Packers to take them on. And, Nick, what do you like about this game? I feel like we've just descended into chaos.
Yeah, do you guys hear that sound? It is Mitchell Trubisky returning under center for the Chicago Bears because
Is that confirmed?
Well, Nick Foles is not practicing because he has an injured hip and glute and ego, and Trubisky he just is practicing. He has not won the job. He just is practicing. They have to go
He's going to win it by being there.
Yeah. So Jair Alexander and Allen Robinson are going to have a duel. I think that really sucks. I think Allen Robinson can beat any cornerback in the NFL, but with Trubisky throwing to him, I don't know. How far do you guys drop him in the rankings? Back end of wide receiver 2 or into flex consideration?
He's my wide receiver 20. So yeah, low end wide receiver 2.
And was that before you knew Trubisky?
That was before I knew about Trubisky. Okay. So I might even bump him down more so. He might even fall out of wide receiver 2 contention with Trubisky under center.
So this is always hard to do, I think, in these situations when you're going from one quarterback who's not very good to a quarterback who's not at all good. Do you need to overreact to that information? Because I feel like it's technically true that Foles is a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
Allen Robinson's still kicking ass when Mr. Trubisky was back there. I can't wait for this game for real NFL watching goodness. But this game is petrifying fantasy-wise. Like all those Packers that have just been rocketing us to victories running into this Bears buzzsaw defense. And I don't know. I don't know how you get away from any of the Packers in this game, but it's just going to be a rough week, I think, for a lot of Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones teams.
Yeah, I'm also saying in that note, a guy who you can get away from and you should be getting away from is Marquez Valdes-Scantling. He's just been kind of a head case this entire season, and that's just kind of been like his thing for the career. But he's put together a good couple of games where his confidence has certainly built, and Aaron Rodgers is trusting him more and getting the ball to him. And then of course he fumbled it all away at the end of that Colts game, which he did tweet this out, and people like, be better than like tweeting death threats to a player because they fumbled the football. Like, let's all chill on that one. Marquez Valdes-Scantling does not deserve your death threats for dropping the ball, literally. And with Alan Lazard coming back, really tough Bears defense, I just think that I could see MVS getting the shaft and returning to like third or fourth wheel behind. I mean, you got a lot of guys there. Robert Tonyan came on against the Colts, and if Lazard is play, and then obviously they're going to get those backs, both Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones involved in the passing game.
Yeah, I would move on from Marquez Valdes-Scantling as soon as possible because he's god awful. That doesn't mean that I would endorse tweeting mean things at him. I just think he's terrible at football. It's his third season. It's still just completely.
I don't know, man. Down. That catch he did on fourth down against the Colts when he was caught as a 47-yard bomb to get them out of the red zone. Like that was an impressive grab.
So I don't know if you remember Jermaine Kearse of the Seattle Seahawks, who made a multi-year career out of like 3 primetime catches.
Hey,
yeah. Anyway, no, we got to really move off of both Scantling and Valdes-Scantling and Alan Lazard. It's going to be a really tough battle. Devontae Adams is still, in contention for overall wide receiver 1 honors. Aaron Jones managers really need to expect a lessened box score than what they would potentially be hoping for. As I put in their running back rankings this week, it took Dalvin Cook 30 rushes to pile up 96 scoreless yards against the Bears defensive front. And Dalvin Cook doesn't have to split time with Jamal Williams. I think Aaron Jones is awesome, but I think this is probably going to be much more of a floor RB1 game than a ceiling RB1 game.
Wrap the week up. Monday Night Football, Seattle Seahawks heading to Philly to take on the Eagles. Nicolas, what are you vibing in this game? Wrap us up.
Yeah, so I think, Travis Fulgham, he's been super fun, but he's now seeing a lot of double coverage or extra attention, kind of putting the top cornerback on him. Jalen Reagor he fits the bill of who has just been kicking the Seahawks ass all year. I can double check right now. I believe they're still number 1. Yeah, 3,437 yards allowed. That's over 400 more yards than the next closest team. So Reagor, I mean, you can kind of just bill him for a long touchdown score, no matter what. Now, Zach Ertz is supposed to be coming back, which is really a stick in the spokes for Dallas Goedert. I think you probably still can start Goddard as like a top 12 option just because the tight end position is so friggin' bad, but that is a real bummer. And also finishing up with Fulham there, I think that he can be started as a flex option, but as of late, it's been really tough, and Wentz has just been kind of terrible. And that's kind of what I wanted to finish on here was the viability of the Seattle Seahawks defense. Philadelphia is one of the friendliest offenses to opposing team defenses. So just looking at a few finishes here, I mean, the last two I think have been low 20-point finishes for opposing defense. I mean, I'm looking just at a personal league right now because I didn't have better means. Oh no, excuse me. I'm pulling this up right here. So we're just gonna kind of pretend like I'm not. Okay, they're the fourth most friendly to opposing defenses. So if you need a streaming defense, look no further than the Seattle Seahawks. It helps. And I got this from the Fantasy Football Hustle with Dwayne McFarland. After Philadelphia, Seattle gets Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold, and/or Joe Flacco, and then Washington. So some really good matchups to kind of pummel the opponent. In coming weeks.
I'm really hoping that this is a Miles Sanders go week. Seahawks allowing third most points to running backs the last 5 weeks, second most receptions. So maybe Carson Wentz, instead of throwing interceptions, can just dump it off to old Miles Sanders. And
yeah, so with this game being Monday night, if you're going to take a chance on Carlos Hyde, I think that's a good maybe worth start there. Bo Scarborough of Detroit Lions, closing out the fantasy season strong last year fame, seems to be playing for the Seattle Seahawks, and he is a giant man who runs forward very well. So if Hyde can't go, I think having Scarborough as a just-in-case last-minute flex option would be a good idea going into Monday night.
Yeah, I do too. But I think, unfortunately, Bo Scarborough is on injured reserve.
The good things die.
Yeah, so Bo Scarborough went on IR yesterday, probably late in the day. That's why we didn't see it. Chris Carson is going to be back for this week. That all signs point to him being back. So, fire him up as like a high-end running back too. Carlos Hyde is definitely going to mix in. Those other dudes, though, I'm not worried about. Travis Homer, DJ Dallas, they had their chance and they didn't seize, the role. They brought in friggin' Alex Collins. So,
yeah, who then suddenly became the number one back.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, there you go. Week 12 starts and sits. Make sure you subscribe to the Fake Teams podcast wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. That's how you'll not only get us, but also our fantasy basketball and baseball podcasts. Follow us on Twitter at RB1 Podcast. If you have specific start and sit questions, make sure to hit us up. We'd love to help you out. You can follow myself at Peter M. Rogers. Follow Clark at NFL Clark and Nick at Ginger__Nick without a K. We will tentatively be back at you next week. Maybe a little more information on that later. Enjoy your Thanksgivings, everyone. Until then, peace.